Hey devs and designers, how you doing? Today I'm going to give you some useful tips for optimization in Unreal Engine 5. If you're ready, let's dive into it. Okay, so the first tip I will give you is going to be about materials, textures, and meshes itself. So for example, I just downloaded this asset from the Quixel Bridge store, and as you can see, this mesh has more than 14,000 triangle and 9,000 vertical. So what can you do about it? You should always care about the triangles and vertices of the meshes. If it is too high, maybe you can think about using nanite. So it is kind of working like a auto LOD system, but it's more advanced. And I think if you have so complex meshes with high triangles, nanite is working pretty great. But if you don't want to use nanite, so what you can do, if you model any mesh yourself, you must sure that you have LODs. In here, as you can see, there's some LOD settings, LOD picker from the static mesh, and I can change the LOD to auto 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is based on LOD means level of details, so which means when you're getting far from the object, it is changing the LOD of the meshes. So when you get closer, it is giving you more detailed edges, textures, and shape. But when you're going far, it is changing the object based on where the player camera is. For example, right now we have 14,000 triangle, but when I go to lot 0 to lot 3, as you can see, it's became 1,800. You definitely think about using this because actually lots of performance problems is all about the light systems, meshes, textures, and materials that you're using in your scene. So let's move to the texture side. As you can see, I can see some textures belongs to this model. So let's check this texture, for example. And as you can see in dimensions is 4096 to 4096. And disk size is 88 megabyte, which is a pretty big size for textures. So based on your game, you don't have to use that much bigger textures in everything. So when you're importing any assets from the stores, if you do it in Blender or doesn't matter, you need to always be sure that your texture sizes and triangles and vertices of the mesh. I'm moving back to the scene. So what can we do else? I put the statue in here. In the LOD settings in here, you can force LOD model to, for example, always working in 0, which is the highest detail, or I can just go to 3. It doesn't affect so much in this model because it's a scanned mesh, but if you made your own LODs in Blender or Maya, you can just adjust how it will look from far or close. So you can optimize your meshes a bit with this way. But there's also one thing that I like so much, which is so culling is a great tool that you can use in your scenes. And as I said, most of games are using this. How does it work? It is basically rendering objects based on how far the player from the object and also where is the camera at looking at. So how we can set this? How I'm going to do, I'm just going to go to place actors in here and I'm just going to type tool distance volume. Add this into the scene. I'm not changing the scale, I'm changing the brush settings. I'm going to make 500, 500, 500. As you can see, we have a cooling distance volume like that. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go to cool distance volume in here. There's two index here. So for the index 0, I'm just going to make it 1000 and 600. I'm coming here and pressing G. Look, it is not rendering anymore after some distance. Most of games are using this because if player doesn't have to see something in the scene, for example, something in player's back, or if player is far enough to not to see that, you don't have to render this anymore. You can use LOD, this culling distance, together so you can have better performance in your scene, especially if you have so many things in your scene, like so many objects, you definitely will cull distance volumes. So with this way, you don't have to render everything in every time, even player not seeing it. You can change this index. Actually, you can add some index too. For example, let's make this 400. After some distance, it is not rendering some things anymore. But for example, I can go to here and make it like 1000. I need to go, so it is still rendering because this is based on the cold distance. You don't have to use exactly cool distance volume in here. You can just go, for example, this object is not in the cool distance. I'm just gonna press G again because it's the game mode. This object not inside of this cool distance volume, I think. So I'm just going to place this in here. So you can go to LOD settings again. And in here, there's minimum draw distance and desired max drawing distance. So let's make it like 700. I'm just gonna press G again. So as you can see, even I'm not using cool distance volume, it is still not rendering after some distance. You always can use these LED settings. You can change your LED models based on distance from the object, and you can also use cool distance volume to not render some objects when player not seeing. So let's move to the next tip. Don't use over post-process volume. Post-process is one of the main reasons that why your scene is slow and why it's not working so fast. So it's okay, of course, you can use post-process volume in your games, but if you tweak some so much settings in the scene, you're changing bloom, exposure, some color grading settings, it is can take a bit more performance than usual. So if you're going to use post-process settings, always make sure that is it necessary or not. I'm not talking about the global illumination and lighting system right now yet, which is I'm going to talk about in this video. So make sure you're following and watching until the end. But for example, if you're going to use post-process, and let's say you want to change something like it is too bright or it is too colorful or you want to change the color and stuff, instead of using post process settings, maybe you can use your directional lights, skylight, or something. For example, if you want to change the temperature, maybe it's better to use temperature in the directional light settings instead of just going to post process volume and going to color grading, temperature, or like those values. I'm not suggesting to use post process all the time, but of course sometimes it's necessary, but always make sure that you is it necessary or not. Always check your engine scalability, material quality, and preview rendering level. For example, right now I'm using Epic quality settings as an engine scalability, but for example, when I go to cinematic, the FPS will be drop until 50. But when I'm going back to Epic again, as you see, it is going more than 100. So actually, you don't have to use everything in max cinematic level because, for example, there's some stuff in here that you don't have to use in epic or cinematic settings. For example, based on the player's computer, you can change the weave distance and the aliasing, post-processing, shadows, and other more. So for example, I'm not using foliage in here right now, so I'm just going to low. Shading, I think high is okay. Textures, medium is okay. Reflections, there's some reflections in the chairs, but still I'm going to go to high. Global illumination, epic is okay. Shadows are high. For example, when I go low, it is being so bad sometimes. High is enough. Post processing, high. Anti-aliasing, high. And view distance, far. Now it set itself to 120, which is because of the V-Sync, but it is more smoother and it's taking less performance than usual. The next step is if you're going to use same meshes in multiple times in your scene, you need to always be sure that you're using material instances instead of materials. Why? Let me show you. For example, I have this model as I showed you before, and I'm just going to copy the 3 times, but I want to change their color a bit. So what I'm going to do, as you see, it is using a material instance. So this static mesh using material instance, which is it is not the actual material. There's also some master material. So let's find the master material. I'm going to material instance, and in here, I'm just scrolling down, and there's a parent, which is the default material. I'm just going to go here and create a material instance. Two, go there, change the base specular to 5, roughness 1, or maybe I'm going albedo tint and that. I'm coming this. I just changed the material, but as a like draw call and general performance, I'm not making another material and I'm just not doing copy paste of this material. Instead of that, I'm creating instance from this master material and I'm using that. It is a better way to keep your performance in your scene, especially if you're working same objects, same kind of objects in the same scene. So always be sure you're using material instances instead of just multiple materials for the same meshes. The other tip I will give you that if you're using some objects that they will never move if they're static, maybe you can turn them into just one static mesh instead of little pieces. So what I mean by that, sometimes if you downloaded any asset from the web or if you made it yourself, sometimes they're being like piece by piece and you need to uh, collect them in a just one blueprint. So what I'm talking about, let me show you. I'm just going to create a blueprint class. Say tutorial 1, get inside of that. What I'm going to do, I'm just
One cube. Here. One more cube. Cube.
so I made something like that. What we have in here, we have 5 different cube in the same blueprint. When I put this into the scene here, as a draw call behavior, it will try to render all of those separately, even they're the same object with using same material. They're still using same material, which is good, but if this is not going to move and if we want to have a better performance for that, what we can do, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to click this blueprint. As you see, it's a blueprint with a couple of cubes inside. I'm just going to go to actor and convert tutorial 1 to static mesh. Save in the contents, static mesh 4. Okay, so we made it. There's a new static mesh in here. How we can replace that? I'm just going to click this. replace selected actors with this. As you see, it is just in one static mesh. The next tip I will give you is don't use animator or sequencer for everything. For example, you want a little flickering in your light. So what can you do? You can just create a level sequencer and you can add your, for example, I add spotlight in here and you can just animate it based on the time you want and you can make it loop. But instead of that, what you can use, you can create a light function for it. I'm going to come here. As you see, there's a light function material. You can just create a basically a normal like material from here. Just go here and create a material. After that, let's go. I just created one. For example, what did I do? I just go here and change the material domain as a light function. And I just made a silly light animation like that, like it's flickering. Save it. Going back to scene again. And in here, I'm just light function material in spotlight. And as you can see, it is working pretty good. It is not a great flickering animation function, but still, I think it's better than using animator and sequencer always in the scene. So let's say you made a scene and it is not working so fast and you don't know what is the problem in your scene, like what is the taking so much performance. So what we can do about it, we can just start off CPU visualizer. I'm just going to go to command console, file, Q. And in here, as you can see, there is a visualizer. And when I check what is taking so much performance, as you see, I'm spending so much on post processing, lights, and diffuse indirect and ambient occlusion. I'm here. Let's see what is taking so much time. Lumen scene gather. There's also so much thing that taking performance my scene. So you can use this CPU visualizer to understand what is taking from your performance in your scene. Lights, for example, direct lighting. For example, let's check it. When I delete this light, save it, and I'm just going to delete my directional. Go and let's do again. As you see, now lumen scene lightning taking so less performance. Of course, I deleted all scenes, all lights in the scene, but for you to understand, you can see what is taking so much performance in your scene with using CPU Visualize. Texture streaming, which is I'm highly recommend if you have so many things in your scene again, you should use texture streaming for better performance. So how are you going to do that? Go to file, go to edit and project settings. And in here, type texture streaming. For example, texture stream. And it says when enabled textures will stream in based on what is visible on the screen. It is just kind of working like LED-ish with textures. So it is changing the texture resolution and stuff based on the distance. I'm not exactly sure how it is working, but I think it's so great for performance. And if you have so many objects in your scene, and let's say you're making an open world game or a game that you're flying and stuff, you always make sure that your texture streaming is enabled, for my opinion. I also mentioned about something. It's about anti-aliasing method. So right now, I'm just going to go edit project settings and I'm just going to type anti-aliasing method. So in default settings, as you see, I'm using temporal anti-aliasing. It's normally, I think it's TSR, which is temporal super resolution. And TSR is taking more performance, even it is giving more accurate and better image on the screen. But if there is a, when you check CPU visualizer, and if you take the anti-aliasing method taking so much performance, maybe you can think about changing your anti-aliasing method from TSR to temporal anti-aliasing. I think it's affecting a bit of the performance, so you can try, and if it works for you, you can think about to use it. Okay guys, so I made a video about some optimization and performance tips for your games. If you like it, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm thinking of making this video again as a second part, which is I'm going to talk about only blueprint and coding, so how you can optimize your code and blueprint files. If you want to see this video, please write a comment down below. Also, if you have any video idea, you can write down below. I'm reading all of your messages and I'm trying to reply them back. So last time, if you liked the video, please like and subscribe. Until the next video, see you all. I hope you all doing great works.